As investors, we need to be comfortable with uncertainty. There are times, however, like now, when uncertainty certainly feels heightened. We have a global health pandemic, a war. We have tensions between the US and China and that rivalry and how it's playing out on the global stage. Importantly, we have heightened inflation, and that is leading to the need for central banks globally to raise interest rates for the first time in more than a decade. The market is currently concerned about whether or not central banks will be able to orchestrate a soft landing or if there'll be policy error that will push us into a recession. So at times of elevated uncertainty, it really brings to the forefront the importance of incorporating uncertainty into a portfolio construction process. It's difficult and a complicated process, but it's really important to ensure that you'll have a robust portfolio. We are a valuation investor, which means we focus on fundamentals. We believe that the value of any asset are the cash flows that asset can generate and the growth of those cash flows. What we need to acknowledge and understand, though, is that those cash flows can actually have quite a wide range of outcomes. There are a lot of different things that will influence those outcomes, one of which is the macro environment. Now, we would be the first to admit that we do not have a competitive advantage in predicting the macro environment. Very few people, arguably if anybody, actually does. And that's not to say it's not important, just that it's extremely difficult to consistently, correctly predict the macro environment. But as Howard Marks would say, you can't predict, but you can prepare. So while we may not know exactly where we are going, we can have a really good understanding of where we are currently at in the market cycle. What is the temperature of the market and what is it telling us about the way we should take risk in the portfolios? To be successful at investing, we focus on three key areas. The first is the fundamentals and making sure that we know more about the fundamentals than most with regards to the industry, the sectors, the countries that we're investing in. The second is actually being very disciplined about the price we're willing to pay to participate in those fundamentals. As a valuation investor, it's very important that we demand a margin of safety to intrinsic value when investing in an asset. This is because there is uncertainty in the world. These first two elements is really the heart and soul of our investment process and where we feel we have a competitive advantage. The third element is for us to really understand the temperature of the market. Where are we at in the market cycle? And what is that telling us about the way we should calibrate the risk in the portfolios? Now, this is less about us predicting what interest rates will be in a year's time or 2 years' time, but rather understanding how value itself is actually changing based on the market conditions. So value investing advocates that we should demand a margin of safety. However, value is not a constant. Value is consistently changing through an actual cycle. There are times, particularly after a large market sell-off, where the margin of safety that you can get from an asset is quite wide. During periods like this, we should be aggressive with our risk-taking. We did this after the COVID sell-off in aggressively positioning in stocks that like energy and financials that others wanted to have absolutely nothing to do with. This really benefited investors. There are other times, however, when value is actually quite expensive. So when the market itself is very elevated in price, the margin of safety that you can actually get is quite reduced. And that's simply because the assets haven't pulled back enough for you to get a larger margin of safety. The other thing that could be impacting the margin of safety is the level of uncertainty. So effectively what could be happening during heightened macro uncertainty, the intrinsic value of the asset itself underneath is changing and therefore moving around the margin of safety that you can achieve. During times like this, it's important that we actually take less risk and calibrate that risk differently in the portfolios. Because during these periods, there's less headroom for error. In the portfolios at the moment, we have been reducing that cyclical risk that we put into the portfolios during the COVID sell-off, taking profits on the assets that have done really well and moving them into more defensive assets and higher quality assets where the variability of cash flow is a lot less.
Any advice in this video is general advice prepared by Morningstar without reference to your objectives, financial situation, or needs. You should consider the advice in light of these matters and any relevant product disclosure statement before making any decision to invest.